abandoned to die in the cursed woods with her newborn twins after her pack's brutal rejection. Omega Seraphina's final prayer is answered when the legendary Alpha King emerges from the shadows. But his rescue comes with secrets that could either crown her as his destined queen or destroy everything she's fought to protect. When ancient prophecies collide with forbidden bonds, and the silver chain around her neck begins to glow with mystical power, will Seraphina discover she's not just a survivor, but the key to healing a fractured realm? Thunder crashes through the night sky as lightning splits the darkness in two. Seraphina clutches her newborn sons against her chest, feeling their tiny hearts beat like scared birds trapped in cages. The forest around her seems alive with hungry eyes and sharp teeth, waiting for her to give up and become their next meal. Blood drips from her torn white dress onto the muddy ground below. Each drop tells a story of pain and betrayal that started 12 hours ago when her own pack decided she wasn't worth keeping alive. Her wolf spirit feels broken inside, like a beautiful song that someone ripped apart with claws. The twins in her arms are so small they could fit in coffee cups. Their skin is pale as winter snow, and their tiny fingers grab at her dress like they know something terrible is happening. She named them in her heart during the long walk to nowhere: Kai and Liam. Strong names for boys who might not live to see morning. Rain pounds against the leaves above her head, making sounds like angry fists hitting a door. Every drop that touches her skin feels like ice, but she can't shiver anymore. Her body doesn't have enough energy left for shivering. It barely has enough energy to keep her heart beating. "Please, moon goddess," she whispers into the cold wind, "save my babies. They don't deserve to die because of what I did wrong." But even as she prays, Seraphina knows the truth. She didn't do anything wrong. Her crime was falling in love with the wrong person at the wrong time. Her crime was having babies that didn't belong to the man her pack forced her to marry. Her crime was being too weak to fight back when they dragged her into these woods and told her to die quietly. The forest grows darker around her hiding spot behind the big oak tree. Shadows dance between the branches like ghosts having a party. Somewhere far away, an owl calls out in a voice that sounds like crying. The sound makes her babies stir in their sleep, and she rocks them gently even though her arms feel like they're made of stone. Her stomach cramps with hunger she can't fix and thirst she can't satisfy. The last time she ate was 3 days ago, a piece of stale bread someone threw at her feet like she was a dog begging for scraps. Water comes from puddles when she's brave enough to put the babies down for a few seconds, but she's afraid to leave them alone even that long. Every muscle in her body screams with pain from giving birth alone in a cave earlier today. No helpers, no medicine, no gentle hands to guide the babies into the world safely. Just her and the darkness and the terrifying knowledge that she might die before she could hold them properly. A branch snaps somewhere close by, then another. Something big is moving through the trees, something that doesn't care about being quiet. Her broken wolf spirit tries to warn her, but the feeling comes out fuzzy and strange, like listening to voices underwater. The smell hits her next wild and dangerous and full of power that makes her skin buzz. Not the comfortable pack smell she grew up with, but something ancient and untamed. Something that owns these woods and everything in them. More footsteps, closer now. Heavy boots on wet ground. The sound of breathing that's too deep to be human. Her heart starts racing again, even though she thought it was too tired to race anymore. Seraphina presses herself tighter against the tree trunk, hoping the darkness will hide her and her sons from whatever is coming. But she knows it's useless. Whatever found them can probably smell her fear from miles away. "I smell blood," a deep voice says from somewhere she can't see. The voice sounds like it belongs to mountains, big and solid and impossible to argue with. Fresh blood. And something else. "What else, my king?" another voice asks. This one sounds younger, more worried. "King?" The word hits Seraphina like cold water. She's been found by royalty, someone who could save her or destroy her with a single word. Her breath catches in her throat as she realizes how much danger she's really in. Tree branches crack and bend as heavy bodies push through the forest toward her. She can hear them getting closer, 2, maybe 3 people who move like they own the world and everything in it. Her babies seem to sense the approaching strangers because they start making soft whimpering sounds that cut right through her heart. Shh, she breathes against their tiny heads. Please be quiet, my loves. Please don't let them find us yet. But it's too late. The footsteps stop right in front of her tree. Hot breath touches her face through the darkness, and golden eyes open like stars being born. They stare right at her like they can see every secret she's ever kept hidden. The owner of those eyes steps into view, and Seraphina forgets how to breathe. He's the most beautiful and terrifying thing she's ever seen. Tall as a giant, strong as a mountain, with long dark hair that moves like water in the wind. Power radiates from his skin like heat from a fire, making the air around him shimmer and dance. Well, well, he says in that voice like rolling thunder. What do we have here? You're bleeding all over my favorite hunting grounds. The man speaking looks like someone took all the best parts of wolves and men and mixed them together perfectly. His shoulders are so wide they could block out the sun, and his arms look strong enough to lift trees. But his eyes, those impossible golden eyes, hold something gentle that doesn't match his dangerous appearance. Seraphina tries to speak but only makes a small choking sound. Her throat feels like someone filled it with sand. The Alpha King, because she knows without asking that's exactly what he is, watches her struggle with patience that surprises her. Can't talk? That's okay. Your smell tells me everything I need to know. He takes a deep breath through his nose, and his face changes like he's reading a sad story written in the air. Blood Moon Pack threw you away. Pregnant Omega-carrying twins. Left you here to become food for my wolves. She finally finds her voice, though it comes out weak and scratchy. Please don't hurt my babies. They never did anything wrong. If you have to kill someone, kill me instead. He stares at her for a long moment, then does something she never expected. He laughs. Not a mean laugh that makes fun of her pain, but a surprise laugh like she just said something amazing. Kill you? Little Omega? Do you think I walked through a thunderstorm just to finish what those cowards started? I don't understand. Her babies shift in her arms and she holds them closer. If you're not here to hurt us, then why are you here? Good question. He looks up at the storm clouds racing across the moon, and his face gets sad in a way that makes her heart hurt for him. I was hunting, following a scent that shouldn't exist anymore. It led me straight to you. One of her sons, little Kai, starts crying. The sound is tiny but fierce, like he's demanding the whole world pay attention to him right now. The Alpha King's eyes snap to the baby, and something changes in his expression. Something that looks like wonder and pain mixed together. How old? He asks. Born today. This afternoon in a cave about 2 miles from here. Seraphina rocks Kai gently until he settles down. I couldn't make it any farther. Alone? The single word carries so much weight that she almost breaks down crying again. My pack said I was cursed. Said my babies would bring bad luck to everyone. They were wrong, but nobody wanted to listen. Packs can be stupid. He steps closer, moving slow and careful like he's approaching a scared animal, especially when fear makes them forget what's right. Are you going to send me back to them? Never. The word comes out sharp as broken glass. You're under my protection now. You and your sons. But you don't even know me. I know enough. He kneels down so they're at the same height, and she can see raindrops caught in his dark hair like tiny diamonds. I know you chose your children's lives over your own safety. I know you've been hurt by people who should have protected you. I know you're stronger than you think, or you wouldn't have made it this far. Seraphina feels something warm spreading through her chest, a feeling she thought was dead forever. Hope, tiny and fragile as a candle flame, but real. What happens now? She asks. Now I take you home. He reaches toward her again, and this time she doesn't pull away. My healer will fix what's broken. My cooks will feed you until you're strong again. My guards will make sure nobody ever hurts you again. And my babies will grow up knowing they're wanted. His fingers brush against her cheek, wiping away tears she didn't know she was crying. Will grow up knowing they matter. As he lifts her carefully into his arms, Seraphina feels her babies relax against his chest, like they recognize something in him that she's only starting to see. His heartbeat is steady and strong, a rhythm that promises safety and something else. something that makes her broken wolf spirit raise its head and listen. Sleep, he tells her as they move through the forest with impossible speed. When you wake up, everything will be different. She wants to stay awake, wants to ask 1,000 questions about why the most powerful man in their world would save a nobody like her. But exhaustion pulls at her like a heavy blanket. And for the first time in days, she feels safe enough to let it win. Her last thought before darkness takes her is a question that will change everything. What if the moon goddess didn't lead him to her by accident? The locked room held answers Seraphina wasn't supposed to find. She'd been exploring the castle for weeks now, growing stronger each day while her twins thrived under the care of King Darius's pack healers. Tonight, curiosity had led her down a hallway she'd never noticed before, one that ended at a door, carved with symbols that made her wolf whine in recognition. Inside, portraits lined the walls like silent judges, but it was the painting at the far end that stole her breath completely. A woman with golden hair and green eyes, identical to her own, stood beside a younger Darius, her hand resting on a belly swollen with child. The nameplate beneath read, Queen Elena Moonright, beloved mate, lost too soon. I wondered when you'd find this place. Darius's voice came from the doorway, but he didn't sound angry. Just tired. Infinitely tired. Seraphina spun around, her heart hammering like a drum. Moonright. That was my grandmother's name before she mated into Blood Moon Pack. The pieces clicked together with horrible clarity. She was your mate. He stepped into the room that clearly served as his private place of mourning. My first mate. She died 20 years ago, along with our unborn daughter. His golden eyes fixed on the portrait with an ache that seemed to echo in her bones. You have her eyes, her gift for reading the magic in growing things, her stubborn streak that drives alphas to madness. So you saved me because I reminded you of a dead woman? The words came out sharper than she intended, but hurt made people say cruel things sometimes. I saved you because the moon goddess doesn't waste gifts. He moved closer, and she caught his scent pine forests after rain, strength tempered by sorrow. Elena could make flowers bloom in winter. You made my dying heart remember what hope felt like. Through the tall windows, storm clouds gathered like an omen. Seraphina touched the silver chain at her throat, feeling it pulse with warmth that had nothing to do with her body heat. Whatever connection she shared with this lost queen went deeper than appearances. It sang in her blood like an old song half remembered. There's more you're not telling me, she said, watching his face for clues. About Elena. About why I can do things other Omegas can't. About why my grandmother left the Moonright line to marry into a lesser pack. Darius was quiet for so long, she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his words changed everything she thought she knew about her past. Because Elena Moonright was the last of the royal Omega bloodline. And if you're truly her kin, he paused, studying her with new intensity, then you're not just any Omega seeking sanctuary. You're potentially the most powerful Omega alive. The silver chain around her neck suddenly felt heavy as a crown. Outside, thunder rolled across the mountains like the footsteps of approaching fate. Whatever life she thought she was building here just became infinitely more complicated. What does that mean for my sons? She whispered. It means they're not just under my protection anymore. His smile held edges sharp enough to cut. They're heirs to two bloodlines that were never supposed to mix. And there are those who would kill to prevent that power from awakening. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the portraits in stark relief. In that brief, brilliant moment, Seraphina could have sworn Elena's painted eyes looked directly at her and winked. Blood on marble floors always told a story, and this one spoke of betrayal served at breakfast. Seraphina found the young servant girl collapsed in the kitchen pantry, foam flecking her lips, and her eyes rolled back white. The smell of bitter almonds hung in the air like a death sentence, mixing with the scent of the morning bread that was supposed to feed her children. Poison! Maya, the head healer, confirmed what Seraphina's Omega instincts had already screamed. Someone tried to taint the twins' milk. Her weathered hand shook as she held up a small glass vial. This poor child must have tasted it first to check for freshness. Seraphina's wolf surged forward with protective fury that made the very air shimmer. Where are my sons? Safe. Hidden. Darius moved them the moment we found her. Maya gripped Seraphina's shoulders. But child, this changes everything. Someone inside the castle wants your babies dead. The great hall had been transformed into a court of judgment by the time Seraphina arrived. Darius sat on his throne like judgment itself, power rolling off him in waves that made lesser wolves drop to their knees. Before him knelt three figures. Beta John, whose loyalty had never been questioned until today. Lady Catherine, whose sweet smiles had hidden sharp teeth. And Elder Marcus, whose ancient wisdom might conceal ancient grudges. Someone in this room tried to murder children, Darius announced, his voice carrying the promise of swift and terrible justice. Someone I trusted with my home, my pack, my family. Seraphina watched their faces, her omega senses picking up the subtle changes in scent that betrayed guilt, fear, and sometimes innocence. Beta John reeked of confusion and genuine horror. Lady Catherine's perfume couldn't quite hide the sharp tang of nervousness, but it felt like social anxiety rather than criminal intent. But Elder Marcus smelled like old secrets and fresh lies. I demand trial by combat, Marcus declared suddenly, rising to his feet with surprising grace for his age. These accusations are based on omega hysteria, not evidence. The gasps that rippled through the assembled pack told Seraphina this was not normal. Elders didn't fight. They advised, they judged, they guided, but they didn't challenge kings to mortal combat. You're within your rights, Darius said slowly, and Seraphina caught the calculating look in his eye. But as the accused, you don't get to choose your opponent. His smile was all teeth. The children's mother will speak for their honor. Every wolf in the room turned to stare at Seraphina. Her mouth went dry as desert sand. Omegas didn't fight elders. Omegas barely fought at all, unless their children were threatened. And then they became forces of nature that even alphas feared to face. I accept, she heard herself say, though her heart hammered like a war drum. But I choose the terms. Human form, no weapons. First to yield loses. Marcus's laugh was ugly and confident. Foolish girl. I was winning battles before you were born. But as they faced each other in the circle marked out on ancient stones, Seraphina felt something shift inside her. The silver chain grew warm against her skin, and power flowed through her veins like liquid moonlight. Not omega submission, but something far older and more dangerous. The fight lasted exactly 37 seconds. Seraphina moved like water given deadly purpose, every motion flowing into the next with grace that belonged more to dancers than warriors. When Marcus swung at her with fists hardened by decades of violence, she wasn't there. When he tried to grab her, she slipped through his grasp like smoke. And when she finally struck back, it was with precision that spoke of training she didn't remember receiving. Marcus hit the ground hard enough to crack the stone beneath him. Blood trickled from his nose as he stared up at her in shock and something that might have been fear. Impossible, he wheezed. Omegas can't. You can't. Royal Omegas can. Darius's voice cut through the stunned silence. The Moonright bloodline was bred to protect what matters most: their children, their mates, their future. He looked directly at Marcus. What they were never bred for was treachery. Elder Marcus pushed himself up on trembling arms, his face twisted with decades of hidden bitterness. You think you've won something here? The Blood Moon Pack won't stop with one failed poisoning. They have allies you don't know about, resources you can't imagine. That Omega and her bastard cubs will be the death of everything you've built. Let them come, Seraphina said. Surprise herself with the steel in her own voice, but they'll find more than a scared, rejected Omega waiting for them. She looked around the hall, meeting the eyes of every pack member present. They'll find a mother who's remembered what she really is. Thunder crashed overhead like applause from the moon goddess herself. The storm that had been building for days finally broke, sending rain against the tall windows in sheets that sounded like whispered promises. As guards led Marcus away to await formal sentencing, Seraphina felt Darius's hand settle on her shoulder. Through their growing bond, she sensed his pride, his protectiveness, and beneath it all, his fear that he might lose her the way he'd lost Elena. The real fight hasn't even started yet, has it? She asked quietly. No, he admitted, but now I know we can win it. Outside, Lightning illuminated the forest where she'd nearly died just months ago. Tonight, it looked less like a place of endings and more like a place where new legends were born. The secret garden behind the castle walls held magic older than memory itself. Seraphina found herself drawn there every night since recovering, watching her twin boys sleep in their basket while moonbeams danced across flowers that bloomed in impossible colors. Tonight felt different, though the air hummed with energy that made her wolf pace restlessly. You feel it too. Darius appeared beside the fountain, like he'd stepped out of starlight itself. His usual royal robes were gone, replaced by simple hunting clothes that made him look younger somehow. More human. The pulling sensation? Like something's calling to me? She touched the silver chain at her throat, the one piece of jewelry she'd managed to keep through everything. It had been growing warmer each day, almost alive against her skin. My grandmother used to tend this garden. He sat on the stone bench, patting the space beside him. She said certain bloodlines could hear the old magic singing. I stopped believing in fairy tales after. His voice trailed off. After your family died. Seraphina settled next to him, careful not to wake the sleeping babies. You don't have to talk about it. Elena wasn't just my mate. She was my best friend since we were kids. His hands clenched into fists on his knees. We grew up planning our future, how we'd change things, make the pack laws fairer, protect the weaker wolves. She was going to be an amazing queen. The pain in his voice made Seraphina's chest tight. What happened? Complications during birth. The healer said it was just bad luck, but he picked up a fallen leaf, crushing it between his fingers. There were herbs missing from the healing supplies, specific ones that would have saved her. Someone wanted her gone. You think someone in your own pack killed her? I know they did. I just could never prove which one. His golden eyes met hers. That's why I was in those woods that night, following a lead about who might have. He stopped suddenly, his whole body going rigid. Darius? What's wrong? He was staring at her neck, at the silver chain that now glowed so bright it cast shadows on the garden walls. Where did you get that? My grandmother gave it to me before she died. Said it belonged to our family for generations, that it would protect me when I needed it most. The chain pulsed against her skin like a second heartbeat. Why? Do you recognize it? Instead of answering, he reached into his shirt and pulled out a matching pendant, silver carved with the same ancient symbols, pulsing with the same otherworldly light. This was Elena's. It's been dead cold since the day she died. The world seemed to tilt sideways. The two pendants pulled toward each other like magnets, and when they touched, the garden exploded with silver fire that didn't burn. Images flooded Seraphina's mind, a young woman with Elena's face, but different clothes, different time. A man who looked like Darius, but older, more weathered. The same garden, but wild and untamed. We've been here before, she whispered, understanding flooding through her like ice water. Different lives, different names, but the same souls, the same love story. Elena's spirit isn't gone. Darius's voice cracked with wonder and terror. She's been waiting to come back through you, to finish what we started. But as the silver light faded, Seraphina caught sight of something that made her blood freeze. Standing at the garden's edge, barely visible in the shadows, was a figure in a dark hooded cloak. Someone had been watching them. Someone now knew their secret. The twins stirred in their basket, making small sounds that weren't quite human and weren't quite wolf. And for the first time since Darius had saved her, Seraphina wondered if being found might have doomed them all. We have to go inside, she said, scooping up her sons with shaking hands. Right now. But when they turned toward the castle, every window was dark, every guard was gone, and the only sound was the distant howl of wolves that didn't belong to the Nightfall pack. They were no longer alone in the garden. They were no longer safe anywhere. Blood painted the throne room floor in patterns that told a story of betrayal 20 years in the making. Seraphina pressed her back against the heavy wooden doors. Her twins clutched protectively to her chest as chaos erupted around them. Alpha Gareth of Blood Moon Pack stood over a fallen guard, his claws dripping red onto ancient stone. Did you really think you could hide forever? Gareth's voice carried the promise of violence. His scarred face twisted into something barely human. That I wouldn't smell my son's blood on those bastard cubs? They're not his children, Darius snarled from across the room. But 3 of Gareth's warriors had him surrounded. Blood ran from a gash on his forehead where someone had struck him with silver, the one metal that could weaken even an alpha king. Marcus was quite helpful once we convinced him to talk. Gareth gestured to the corner where Elder Marcus lay bound and gagged, his eyes wide with terror. Told us all about your little garden reunion. About the pendants. About Elena's spirit living on in this Omega trash. Seraphina's wolf howled inside her mind, desperate to shift and fight, but she was still too weak from childbirth. Her only weapons were her voice, and the truth burning in her chest like silver fire. You're the one who killed Elena, she said, the words ringing through the stone chamber like a bell. You poisoned her healing herbs because you couldn't stand that she was making Darius stronger, making changes you hated. Elena was turning him soft, making him care about Omegas, about the weak. Gareth spat on the floor. A true alpha takes what he wants and destroys what threatens him. Your precious king never learned that lesson. But you made a mistake, Seraphina continued, her voice growing stronger even as her body trembled. You didn't just kill Elena, you killed Darius's son too, your own pack member's child. That makes you a child killer. The words hit the room like lightning. Even Gareth's own warriors stepped back, their faces showing the horror that every wolf felt at such an accusation. In their world, nothing was more sacred than protecting cubs. She's lying, Gareth roared, but his scent betrayed him. Fear, guilt, the stink of old sins finally dragged into the light. The silver chains prove it. Seraphina held up her pendant, still glowing with ethereal light. They're connected to Elena's spirit. She's been trying to tell us who killed her all this time. That's when Marcus appeared in the doorway, not the elder, but her son. The boy she'd left behind when Blood Moon cast her out. At 15, he was already tall and strong, his young face set with determination that reminded her painfully of his father. She's not lying, Marcus said, his voice cracking with emotion. I heard you, grandfather. The night she gave birth, you were arguing with father about the plan to get rid of her. You said killing the Alpha King's babies would be 2 birds with 1 stone. You little... Gareth lunged toward his own grandson, but the boy was ready. Marcus shifted mid-leap, his wolf form young but fierce, tackling the older Alpha with surprising skill. The distraction was all Darius needed. Power exploded from him like a storm breaking, sending Gareth's warriors flying into the walls. But instead of going for Gareth, he moved to Seraphina's side, placing himself between her and any threat. It's over, Gareth, Darius said, his voice deadly calm now. Your pack, your lies, your reign of fear, all of it ends tonight. You think killing me will solve anything? Gareth laughed, blood running from his mouth where Marcus had caught him with sharp young teeth. There are others who remember the old ways, others who think mixing bloodlines makes us weak. Then they can learn the same lesson you're about to. Darius's claws extended, but before he could strike, Seraphina's hand touched his arm. Wait. She stepped forward, her twin still in her arms but her voice steady as steel. I want to know why. Why hate your own grandsons? Why destroy your own pack's future? Because you made us weak. Gareth struggled to his feet, swaying but defiant. Before you came back, before these children, we were strong, pure. Now look at us taking orders from a king who'd rather save strays than lead properly. No, Seraphina said quietly. You were already broken. I just showed everyone what you really were underneath. She looked around the room at the watching faces, some loyal to Darius, some from Blood Moon, all waiting to see how this would end. A pack that throws away mothers and children isn't strong. It's dying. The truth of it settled over everyone like morning mist. Even some of Gareth's own warriors were looking at their leader with new eyes, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time. The Blood Moon pack needs new leadership, Darius announced. Someone who understands that strength comes from protecting the vulnerable, not destroying them. His eyes found Marcus, still in wolf form but listening intently. Someone young enough to learn a better way. Gareth made one last desperate lunge, but this time it was his own pack members who stopped him. They'd heard enough, seen enough. The old Alpha fell to his knees as his followers turned their backs, choosing a future over a past built on lies and cruelty. As dawn broke through the tall windows, painting everything in gold and silver light, Seraphina felt something shift in her chest, not just healing from her physical wounds, but something deeper. The part of her soul that had been broken by rejection was finally whole again. Her sons gurgled happily in her arms, reaching toward the sunlight with tiny fingers that would someday hold the power to reshape their world. And beside her, Darius stood not just as the Alpha King, but as the mate who'd found her when she was lost and loved her back to life. The silver chains around their necks had stopped glowing, their work finally done. Elena's spirit could rest now, knowing that the love she'd shared with Darius lived on in a new form, with new hope and new possibilities, stretching endlessly ahead. The ground shook beneath their feet as Gareth's roar split the night air like thunder. His wolf form towered over the challenge circle, muscles rippling with rage and old wounds that had never healed right. But Seraphina wasn't watching him anymore. She was staring at the boy who had stepped out from behind Gareth's warriors, a boy with her green eyes and Darius's strong jaw. "Marcus?" she whispered, her heart breaking all over again. This was her firstborn, the son Gareth had stolen from her arms 3 years ago, the child she'd mourned as dead. The teenage boy looked between his supposed father and the Alpha King, confusion written across his young face. "Mother? But father said you died in childbirth." "He said you were weak and couldn't survive bringing me into the world." Darius stepped forward, his power crackling in the air like electricity before a storm. "Your father is a liar and a thief. Look at me, boy. Really look. What does your wolf tell you?" Marcus tilted his head, and Seraphina saw the moment recognition dawned. His nostrils flared, and his eyes went wide with shock. "You smell like home, like pack, like—" He stumbled backward. "No, that's impossible," Gareth snarled, his massive wolf form pacing the circle's edge. "Enough tricks, Nightfall. The boy is mine by right of mating. The woman bears my mark." "A forced mark," Elder Thomas called out, stepping into the moonlight with ancient scrolls clutched in his weathered hands, bound by dark magic and blood curses. "I have the records here, witnessed by the moon goddess herself." The crowd gasped as Thomas unrolled the parchment, revealing symbols that glowed silver in the darkness. Seraphina Moonright was already bonded to King Darius when Blood Moon Pack attacked the Moonsong Festival. They used forbidden magic to hide the true bond and force a false one. Marcus's transformation was sudden and beautiful, a young wolf with midnight fur and golden eyes, unmistakably Nightfall blood. He threw back his head and howled, a sound that called to every wolf in the territory. The twins in Seraphina's arms answered with their own baby cries, their tiny voices somehow harmonizing with their brother's song. "My sons," Darius breathed, wonder replacing the anger in his voice. All 3 of them. Gareth's attack was swift and vicious, but he'd underestimated the power of truth finally spoken. As he leaped toward Seraphina, Marcus moved like lightning, placing himself between the monster who'd raised him and the mother he'd been told was dead. The collision sent them both tumbling across the stones. "You killed my real father," Marcus accused, his young voice breaking with fury and heartbreak. "You stole my mother and lied about everything." "I made you strong," Gareth snapped back, blood dripping from his muzzle where Marcus's claws had found their mark. "I gave you purpose. Without me, you'd be nothing but another Nightfall weakling." "Without you," Seraphina said, rising to her feet with newfound strength flowing through her veins. "He would have known love instead of lies. He would have grown up knowing his true family." The silver chain around her neck blazed like a falling star, and suddenly, everyone could see what had been hidden for so long. Golden threads of light connected her to Darius, to Marcus, to the babies in her arms. The true bonds, blessed by the moon goddess and stronger than any curse. Elder Thomas raised his staff, and ancient magic filled the air. "By the laws of our ancestors and the blessing of the moon herself, I declare the false bonds broken and the true ones restored. Seraphina Moonright, do you accept your place as Queen of Shadowpine, mate to Alpha King Darius, and mother to his heirs?" The words hung in the air like a spell waiting to be cast. Around the circle, pack members from both territories held their breath. Even the wind seemed to pause, waiting for her answer. Seraphina looked at Darius, seeing not just the powerful king, but the broken man who'd spent 20 years mourning what he'd lost. She looked at Marcus, her brave boy who'd stepped between danger and family without hesitation. She looked down at the twins, so tiny but already showing signs of the strength they'd inherited. "I accept," she said, and her voice carried across the mountains like a promise. "Not because I have to, but because I choose to. Because some bonds are stronger than death, and some families are worth fighting for." The explosion of light that followed could be seen for miles. Magic, ancient as the first shifters, flowed through the gathering, healing old wounds and forging new connections. When it faded, Gareth lay unconscious at the circle's edge, his power broken by the weight of his own lies. But the real victory wasn't in defeating an enemy. It was in the way Marcus walked to his mother without fear, the way the twins reached for their big brother with tiny hands, the way Darius knelt before Seraphina, not as a king to his subject, but as a man to his equal. Spring came early to Shadowpine territory, as if the land itself was celebrating the changes that had transformed everything. Seraphina stood in the nursery she'd designed herself, watching sunlight dance across walls painted with murals of wolves running under starlit skies. Her sons, all three of them, now filled the space with laughter and the kind of chaos that meant a house was truly alive. "They're getting too big for this room," Darius observed, leaning against the doorway with that small smile he saved just for family moments. 6 months of happiness had softened the harsh lines around his eyes, though his presence still commanded respect from every wolf in the territory. "Marcus keeps saying he's too old for a nursery anyway," Seraphina laughed, watching their teenager attempt to teach the twins how to crawl properly. "But he's here every morning, helping with their breakfast. He's making up for lost time. We all are." The truth of those words settled warm in her chest. The past months had been a revelation in what family could look like when it was chosen freely instead of forced by circumstance. Marcus had mourned the lies he'd been raised with, but he'd embraced his real heritage with the resilience of youth. The twins grew stronger every day, their little personalities already showing hints of the leaders they'd become. "The delegation from Silver Creek Pack arrives tomorrow," Darius reminded her, though his tone suggested duty rather than enthusiasm. "They want to discuss trade agreements. And see if the rumors about our family are true," Seraphina added with a knowing look. Word had spread through the shifter world about the Alpha King, who'd found his true mate and reclaimed his stolen sons. Some came seeking alliance, others hoping to find weakness they could exploit. "Let them look," she said, adjusting the silver crown that still felt strange on her head but right in her heart. "We have nothing to hide anymore." A commotion from the courtyard drew their attention to the windows. Marcus was racing across the training grounds in his wolf form, the twins giggling from their basket as he gave them the gentlest ride possible. Other young wolves from the pack followed, turning the lesson into a game that built bonds between the future generation. "He'll be a good big brother," Darius observed. "A good leader someday when he's ready." "He already is." Seraphina watched her eldest son with pride that made her chest tight with emotion. "Look how he protects them, how he includes the other pack children. You've taught him well." "We've taught him well," Darius corrected, slipping his arms around her waist. "This is what he learned from watching us choose each other every day." The simple truth of it made her lean back against his solid warmth. They had chosen each other not just once in that moment of rescue, but daily, through the small acts of building a life together. Through morning feedings and midnight worries, through diplomatic dinners and quiet conversations by firelight. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't found us that night?" she asked. Darius was quiet for a long moment, his chin resting on her shoulder as they watched their children play. "I think the moon goddess had other plans," he finally said. "I think she knew we needed each other. You needed saving, and I needed someone to save. Marcus needed his real family, and the twins needed a world where they could grow up knowing they belonged." A soft knock interrupted them. Elder Thomas entered with documents that bore official seals treaties with neighboring packs, trade agreements that would bring prosperity to both territories, and most importantly, adoption papers that would make Marcus legally what he'd always been by blood, A nightfall air. The Silver Creek delegation sent word ahead, Thomas reported with barely contained excitement. They're not just coming to trade. They want to propose a marriage alliance between their Alpha's daughter and young Marcus when he comes of age. Absolutely not, Seraphina said immediately, then caught herself and laughed. I mean, we'll discuss it with Marcus when he's older. Much older. Agreed, Darius said solemnly, though his eyes twinkled with amusement. No marriage contracts until he's at least 25. 30. Seraphina countered. 40? Perfect. Thomas chuckled as he set the papers aside. I'll let them know you'll consider their proposal in a few decades. As evening approached, the family gathered in the great hall for dinner, not the formal affairs of state Seraphina had expected, but warm, loud meals where Marcus told stories about his training and the twins threw food with impressive accuracy. Pack members joined them freely. The rigid hierarchy of old replaced by something more like an extended family. Later, when the children were asleep and the castle had settled into peaceful quiet, Seraphina and Darius walked the gardens where they'd first shared their broken hearts. The memorial stone for his first family remained, but it no longer felt like a monument to loss. Instead, it had become a reminder that love takes many forms, that healing doesn't mean forgetting, and that sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in the deepest pain. I dreamed about this place when I was dying in those woods, Seraphina admitted, her fingers tracing the silver chain that had revealed their destiny. About gardens that bloomed year-round, about children laughing in safe places, about belonging somewhere so completely that exile became impossible to imagine. And now, she looked up at him, this man who'd saved her life and then spent months proving she deserved the saving. Now I dream about tomorrow, about watching our sons grow into the leaders they're meant to be, about building something that lasts longer than we do. The moon rose full and bright above them, blessing their small kingdom with silver light. In the distance, wolves sang to each other across the mountains, not in challenge or warning, but in pure joy. The song of a pack that had found its heart again, of a family that had been broken and made whole, of love that had survived every test fate could devise. Seraphina closed her eyes and added her voice to the harmony, finally understanding what the moon goddess had always known. Sometimes you have to lose everything to find what you were truly meant to have. And sometimes, the greatest adventures begin not with conquest, but with the simple, radical act of choosing to trust love over fear. The story of Blood Moon's redemption had ended, but the real story, the daily choice to build something beautiful from the ashes of what came before, would continue with every sunrise for the rest of their lives.